I always thought I was good at reading people until my sister's wedding day. That's when I realized I'd been reading all the wrong chapters in everyone's story, especially my own. My name is Destiny, and I'm what you'd call a professional peacekeeper, a conflict resolution specialist who somehow missed the atomic bomb ticking away in her own living room. The irony isn't lost on me. You're gonna wear that necklace to the rehearsal dinner? My sister Felicia's voice carried that familiar edge as she adjusted her designer dress in front of my bedroom mirror. Clay bought it for you last Christmas, didn't he? I touched the silver pendant at my throat, catching my reflection behind her. Yes, he did. Is there a problem? She turned, her perfectly made-up face sporting a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Oh, no problem. I just thought, never mind. She waved her hand dismissively, but I caught the gleam in her eye, the one that always preceded chaos in our family. Felicia, whatever you're planning for tomorrow. Planning? She laughed, the sound brittle as winter ice. I'm planning to marry Marco, remember? That's all there is to it. But I knew better. The way she kept checking her phone, the hushed conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, the meaningful glances between her and Clay, my husband of 8 years. I'd seen it all, filed it away like the countless mediation reports on my desk at work. Mom's worried about your speech, I said carefully, watching her reaction in the mirror. Mom's always worried about something. Felicia rolled her eyes. She thought I'd trip walking down the church aisle when I was 5 and carrying flowers at Cousin Sarah's wedding. She thought I'd fail college. She thought Marco was too good for me. She paused, meeting my eyes in the reflection. What do you think, Destiny? Is Marco too good for me? The loaded question hung in the air like smoke. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Clay. Stuck at work. Don't wait up. Felicia glanced at my phone screen and smirked. Still working late, is he? He's finalizing a big contract, I replied automatically, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. 3 months ago, I'd found the first message. 2 months ago, I'd seen the hotel receipt. 1 month ago, I'd started documenting everything. You know what your problem is, sis. Felicia turned to face me directly. You're too good at solving everyone else's problems. Maybe it's time you solved your own. A knock at the door saved me from responding. Mom poked her head in, her face creased with concern. Girls, dinner's ready. Uncle Pablo's here, and he's asking about the seating arrangement for tomorrow. Again? Felicia groaned. I swear this wedding is killing me. If only she knew what her wedding would actually kill. My marriage, her relationship with Marco, our family's carefully maintained facade of perfection. But tomorrow's script was already written, and Felicia had appointed herself director of this tragedy. At dinner, I watched her hold Marco's hand, laugh at his jokes, play the part of the blushing bride-to-be. My husband sat across from me, his phone conspicuously silent now, offering warm smiles to everyone at the table. Uncle Pablo, ever observant, kept glancing between us all with knowing eyes. A toast, Marco proposed, raising his glass. To my beautiful bride-to-be, and to all of you, the family I'm blessed to be joining. Everyone clinked glasses. I caught Felicia's eye across the table, saw the flash of guilt quickly masked by determination. She thought she was protecting me in her own twisted way. She thought exposing Clay's betrayal during her wedding speech would somehow make things right. What she didn't know was that I'd already made my decision weeks ago. The divorce papers were drafted, the separate account was opened, and my new apartment was leased. I'd learned from years of mediation that the best resolutions come from careful planning, not explosive revelations. Destiny? Clay's voice pulled me from my thoughts. You're quiet tonight. I smiled, the expression feeling foreign on my face. Just thinking about tomorrow, It's going to be quite memorable. Felicia's fork clattered against her plate. Mom shot her a warning look, but my sister was already standing. I need some air, she announced, hurrying from the room. Marco moved to follow her, but I placed a hand on his arm. Let me, I said softly. Sister stuff. I found her in the garden, furiously typing on her phone. When she heard my footsteps, she quickly locked the screen. Whatever you're planning, I said quietly, remember that karma has a way of coming full circle. She looked up at me, moonlight catching the tears in her eyes. Sometimes karma needs a little push, don't you think? I left her there, knowing that tomorrow would change everything, but not in the way she planned. Because while Felicia was preparing to drop her bomb at the reception, she had no idea she was about to become collateral damage in her own explosion. Morning light filtered through the church windows as I helped Felicia into her wedding dress. Her hands trembled as I fastened each pearl button, though not from typical bride jitters. You don't have to do this, I whispered, meeting her eyes in the mirror. Actually, I do. She gripped her phone tightly. Can you check if Marco's ready? I need to prepare something. I knew what that meant. More scheming, more plotting. As I left the bridal suite, I bumped into Clay in the hallway. He caught my arm to steady me, and I fought the urge to pull away. Hey, beautiful, he smiled, straightening his best man's tie. Everything okay with the bride? Shouldn't you know? The words slipped out before I could stop them. His smile faltered. What's that supposed to mean? Before I could respond, Marco appeared, looking sharp in his tuxedo, but nervous. Is Felicia all right? She's been acting strange all morning. Pre-wedding nerves, I lied smoothly. Nothing to worry about. Destiny. Marco grabbed my hand, his eyes sincere. Thank you for being here for both of us. You're like the sister I never had. The guilt in Clay's expression was almost imperceptible. But after 8 years of marriage, I caught it. I excused myself, claiming I needed to check on the flowers, but instead found myself in the church garden, remembering the moment 3 months ago that started it all. Clay's phone had buzzed during dinner. He'd turned it face down, but not before I glimpsed Felicia's name on the screen. Later that night, I'd checked his phone while he showered, something I'd never done before. The messages were innocent enough, but there was an undercurrent of intimacy that made my stomach turn. There you are, Mom's voice startled me back to the present. The photographer wants pre-ceremony shots. And have you seen your sister? She's locked herself in the bridal suite. I headed back inside, knocking on the heavy wooden door. Felicia, it's me. She opened it a crack, mascara slightly smudged. I need to tell you something. Now? Yes, now. She pulled me inside, checking to make sure we were alone. I need you to meet me in the church office right after the ceremony, before the reception. There's something you need to see first. Whatever it is, just tell me now. She shook her head, wiping at her eyes. I can't, but promise me you'll come. Promise me you'll listen. Felicia, promise me. Her voice cracked with desperation. Okay, I promise. I helped her fix her makeup, wondering if she knew I'd already seen everything. The texts, the photos, the hotel receipts. I'd been gathering evidence while she'd been planning her grand reveal. The ceremony began right on schedule. I stood in my maid of honor dress, watching Felicia walk down the aisle toward Marco. Clay stood beside him, the perfect best man, smiling at all the right moments. Uncle Pablo, sitting in the front row, caught my eye and gave me a knowing look. During the vows, I remembered my own wedding day. Clay had promised to love and cherish me forever. I'd believed him then. Now I wondered how many other promises he'd broken along the way. After the ceremony, I made my way to the church office as promised. Felicia was already there, still in her wedding dress, clutching a manila envelope. Before you open this, she said, I want you to know I'm doing this because I love you. Are you? I asked quietly. Or is there another reason? She flinched. What do you mean? I've seen the way you look at Marco, the way you've always looked at him, even before he and I introduced you. This isn't about Marco, she protested, but her face flushed. Isn't it? You're in love with him, aren't you? But he fell for you instead of you falling for him. That must have hurt. You don't understand anything. She thrust the envelope at me. Just look at these. Then you'll understand why I have to do this. I took the envelope but didn't open it. The reception starts in 20 minutes. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Clay doesn't deserve you, she whispered. He never did. And Marco deserves you? She stepped back as if I'd slapped her. What are you saying? I'm saying that karma works in mysterious ways, little sister. I placed the unopened envelope on the desk. Let's get to the reception. You have a speech to give, don't you? She stared at me, realization slowly dawning in her eyes. For the first time, she looked afraid, not of what she was about to do, but of what I might already know. As we walked to the reception hall, I could feel the weight of secrets pressing down on both of us. Felicia thought she was about to blow up my marriage, but she had no idea she was sitting on a powder keg of her own making. The reception hall doors loomed before us, and I heard Marco's voice announcing the arrival of the bride and groom. Felicia squared her shoulders, ready to destroy everything. If only she knew she was about to destroy herself in the process. The reception hall buzzed with celebration as waiters circulated with champagne. I watched Clay work the room, stopping to chat with relatives, his charm turned up to maximum. The same charm that had once made me feel special now felt like sandpaper against my skin. Uncle Pablo slid into the seat next to me, his expression concerned. You're wearing your mediator face, he observed, sipping his drink. Am I that obvious? Only to those who know what to look for. He nodded toward Felicia, who was whispering something to Marco at the head table. She's been checking her phone every 2 minutes. She's about to make a terrible mistake, I said quietly. Aren't we all experts at those? Pablo leaned closer. Remember when you were 10 and Felicia broke Mom's favorite vase? You took the blame. That was different. Was it? You've been taking the blame for other people's mistakes your whole life, Destiny. He touched my arm gently. Maybe it's time to let people face their own consequences. Before I could respond, Clay appeared at our table. Mind if I borrow my wife for a dance? Pablo's eyes hardened slightly, but he smiled. She's all yours, for now. Clay led me to the dance floor as the band played a slow song. His hand on my waist felt foreign now, like a stranger's touch. You've been quiet all day, he said, guiding me through the steps. Have I? I thought I was being quite observant. I met his eyes. For instance, I observed you checking your phone during the ceremony. His step faltered slightly. Work stuff. Really? Because I could have sworn I saw Felicia's name on your screen. The color drained from his face. Destiny. Don't. I pulled away slightly, keeping my voice low. Not here. Not now. Please let me explain. Room 4 and 12. I cut him off. The Grand Hotel downtown, 3 weeks ago. Should I continue? He stopped dancing completely, other couples moving around us like water around a rock. How did you? I'm a conflict resolution specialist, Clay. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't investigate? It's not what you think. The Riverside Cafe receipts, the late-night texts, the mysterious work meetings that never showed up on your company calendar. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I have copies of everything. The music ended, and applause filled the hall. Clay grabbed my elbow, steering me toward a quiet corner. Whatever Felicia told you. Felicia hasn't told me anything. I interrupted. She doesn't need to, but she's about to tell everyone else. His face went from pale to ashen. What are you talking about? The maid of honor speech is coming up soon, and your girlfriend has quite a performance planned. She's not my. He stopped, running a hand through his hair. This is insane. You can't let her. Let her? I laughed softly. Oh, honey, I'm not letting her do anything. I'm just going to watch while karma does its job. Mom appeared suddenly, clutching her phone. Destiny, can you check on your sister? She's been in the bathroom for 20 minutes, and the speeches are supposed to start soon. I found Felicia in the bathroom, gripping the sink, her wedding dress bunched up around her. Her makeup was perfect, but her eyes were wild. Having second thoughts? I asked, letting the door swing shut behind me. I'm doing this for you, she insisted, but her voice shook. No, you're doing this for yourself. I moved to stand beside her. Because you've been in love with Marco since college, haven't you? Since before I introduced you to? She spun to face me. That's not. The thing about karma, Felicia, is that it always comes full circle. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a saved message. Like this text you sent Marco last month. I've loved you since the day we met. Everything else has just been settling. The color drained from her face. How did you? Marco left his phone unlocked at Sunday dinner. I saw everything, including your deleted messages about how you only agreed to the wedding because you thought he'd eventually love you the way you loved him. You don't understand, she whispered. Actually, I do. You thought exposing Clay would somehow make you feel better about your own lies. But here's the thing about lies, little sister. They have a way of exposing themselves. A knock at the door made us both jump. 5 minutes to speeches, Mom called. Felicia gripped my arm. Please, Destiny, don't what? Tell the truth. Isn't that what you were planning to do? I gently removed her hand. It's time for both of us to stop protecting people who don't deserve it. I left her in the bathroom, her reflection fractured in the mirror like the pieces of truth she was about to scatter across the reception hall. As I walked back to the main room, I saw Clay watching me, his face a mask of barely contained panic. The DJ was announcing it was time for speeches. Marco beamed from the head table, completely unaware that his world was about to shatter from two different directions. Sometimes karma needs a little push, Felicia had said last night. She had no idea how right she was. The microphone squealed with feedback as Felicia took the stage, her white dress gleaming under the reception hall lights. Her hands trembled as she unfolded a piece of paper, but her voice was steady when she spoke. I'd like to thank everyone for being here today, she began, her eyes scanning the crowd. Especially my dear sister Destiny and her husband Clay, who introduced me to Marco. Clay shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I took a slow sip of champagne, watching him squirm. You know, it's funny how life works out, Felicia continued. How the people we trust the most can surprise us. How love can blind us to what's right in front of our faces. Marco beamed up at her, completely missing the edge in her voice. Uncle Pablo caught my eye from across the room, his expression grave. I have something I need to share. Felicia's voice cracked slightly. Something I've been holding on to for too long. Oh, God, Mom whispered beside me. What is she doing? Felicia reached into a hidden pocket in her dress and pulled out her phone. I've been struggling with how to handle this, but I believe the truth needs to come out. Clay stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. I think we should toast the happy couple first. Sit down, Clay, I said quietly, but firmly enough that heads turned. Let her finish. He sank back into his chair, face ashen. I have here, Felicia's voice strengthened, evidence of a betrayal so deep it makes me sick. She unlocked her phone. Text messages, photos, hotel receipts. The room had gone completely silent. Marco's smile had frozen on his face. My dear brother-in-law. She turned to Clay. Would you like to explain these messages yourself, or should I read them aloud? Clay jumped up again. This is inappropriate. What's inappropriate? Felicia cut him off. Is sleeping with your best friend's fiancé. The gasp that went through the room was almost theatrical. Marco stood slowly, his face contorting in confusion. What are you talking about? He demanded. Felicia's hand shook as she held up her phone. June 15th, from Clay. I can't stop thinking about last night. June 28th. We need to be more careful. Destiny's getting suspicious. I stood up, my chair sliding back. Actually, Felicia, why don't you share the messages from May 3rd? She froze, her eyes widening. What? The ones you sent to Marco? I pulled out my own phone. Should I read them instead? Destiny, don't. Marco. I read clearly. I've been in love with you since college. Every day I'm with you feels like a lie because you don't love me the way I love you. The room erupted in murmurs. Marco's face drained of color as he turned to Felicia. What is she talking about? That's not, Felicia stammered. This isn't about that. No, I continued, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. This is about you trying to destroy my marriage to deflect from your own guilt. About you marrying a man you know doesn't love you the way you love him. Is this true? Marco asked, his voice hollow. Tears streamed down Felicia's face. I thought, I thought if we got married, you'd eventually feel the same way. And Clay? He turned to his best friend. The messages? Clay raised his hands. Marco, I can explain. Explain what? I interrupted. The hotel meetings? The late-night texts? The lies you both told while betraying the people who trusted you most? Mom stood up, swaying slightly. Destiny, please. No, Mom. No more keeping the peace. No more protecting people from their own choices. I turned to address the stunned crowd. My husband and my sister have been having an affair for months, and my sister married a man she's been obsessing over since before I introduced them, hoping he'd eventually love her back. The silence that followed was deafening. Felicia dropped the microphone, the thud echoing through the speakers. Marco stepped away from the head table, shaking his head in disbelief. All this time, he said quietly. Everything was a lie? Not everything, Felicia pleaded. My feelings for you were real. Real? He laughed bitterly. You've been sleeping with my best friend, and you never loved me, she shot back. Not really. I was just convenient, wasn't I? A replacement for… Enough! Uncle Pablo's voice cut through the chaos. He stood up, commanding the room's attention. I think we've all heard enough. Clay tried to reach for my arm. Destiny, please, let me explain. I stepped back, removing my wedding ring. I filed for divorce last week. The papers will be delivered to your office on Monday. The ring clattered as it hit his plate. Felicia stood frozen on the stage, her grand revenge plan lying in shambles around her designer heels. Marco was already walking toward the exit, his best man and new bride both watching him go with identical expressions of loss. Sometimes karma doesn't just need a push, I thought. Sometimes it needs an audience. The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect when a wedding reception turns into a reality show finale. Guests huddled in whispered clusters, while the catering staff awkwardly continued serving dinner that no one would eat. I need some air, I announced to no one in particular, heading for the garden terrace. The cool evening air hit my face as I pushed through the French doors. To my surprise, Marco was already there, loosening his bow tie with shaking hands. I should have known, he said without turning around. The way she always talked about our college days, even though we hadn't met then. Marco, did you know? He turned to face me. About Clay and her? I found out 3 months ago. I moved to stand beside him at the railing. The same week I discovered she'd been in love with you since before I introduced you to. He ran a hand through his hair. God, what a mess. I thought, I really thought she loved me. She does, I said softly. That's the tragedy of it. She loves you so much she destroyed everything trying to keep you. By sleeping with Clay? He laughed bitterly. That's a strange way of showing love. The door opened behind us, and Felicia stepped out, her mascara streaked down her cheeks. Marco, please. Don't. He held up a hand. Just don't. I can explain everything, she pleaded. Clay and it wasn't what you think. What I think, Marco's voice was ice, is that my wife and my best friend betrayed me before we even said our vows. And what about you? She shot back, acting like I was the love of your life when really I was just second best. I stepped between them. Felicia, that's enough. No, it's not. She was crying now, mascara running freely. He never got over his college girlfriend. I was just convenient, someone who reminded him of her. Marco's face went white. That's not. Tell me I'm wrong, she challenged. Tell me you don't still have her photos on your phone. Tell me you don't compare every woman to her. At least I didn't sleep with someone else's husband. The doors burst open again, and Clay stumbled out. Marco, buddy, please. I'm not your buddy. Marco's hands clenched into fists. I'm not anything to you anymore. Clay took a step forward. It was a mistake. We were both drunk, and the punch happened so fast I barely saw it. One moment Clay was talking. The next he was sprawled on the terrace, blood trickling from his nose. Marco! I grabbed his arm before he could swing again. Stop! Why should I? He was shaking with rage. They deserve each other. Because violence won't undo what's done. I kept my voice calm, professional mediator mode kicking in. And you're better than this. Felicia moved to help Clay up, but he pushed her away. Don't touch me, he spat. This is all your fault. My fault? She laughed hysterically. You're the one who came to my apartment that night. You're the one who said you'd always had feelings for me. I felt Marco tense under my grip. When? He demanded. When did this start? The night after your engagement party, Clay admitted, holding his bleeding nose. She was upset, said she needed someone to talk to, because I just agreed to marry a man who would never love me the way I loved him. Felicia finished, and you were there, telling me everything I wanted to hear. So you decided to hurt everyone? I asked quietly. Was that the plan? She turned to me, her wedding dress now stained with Clay's blood. I wanted to hurt them like they hurt me, like everyone always hurts me. And how's that working out for you? The garden fell silent except for the muffled music from inside. Mom appeared at the doors, took one look at the scene, and promptly closed them again. The marriage isn't legal yet, Marco said finally. We haven't signed the license. Felicia's face crumpled. Marco, please, don't contact me again, either of you. He straightened his jacket. I'll have my lawyer handle everything. He walked back inside, leaving Felicia and Clay standing awkwardly apart, neither willing to look at the other. You should get some ice for that nose, I told Clay, and pack your things. I want you out of the house by tomorrow. Destiny, he reached for me. We can work this out. No, we can't, I stepped back, because I deserve better than someone who sleeps with my sister, and you deserve whatever karma has in store for you. I turned to Felicia, who looked small and lost in her ruined wedding dress. You wanted the truth to come out? Well, congratulations. It's all out now. What am I supposed to do? She whispered. That's not my problem anymore. I headed for the doors. For once in my life, I'm done fixing other people's messes. Behind me, I heard Felicia start to sob, but I didn't turn around. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their own actions, even if that someone is your sister. The week after the wedding disaster, I sat in my office staring at divorce papers when Uncle Pablo knocked on my door. "You look like you could use this," he said, placing a coffee on my desk. "Extra shot of espresso. I could use something stronger." I gestured to the chair across from me. "Have you heard from Felicia?" "She's staying at your mom's. Hasn't left her old bedroom in days." He settled into the chair. "Clay's been calling everyone, trying to get people to talk to you." "I changed my number yesterday." I took a sip of coffee. "And hired a security company to change the locks." "Smart girl." He leaned forward. "But that's not why I'm here. I have a proposition for you." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." "I'm expanding my consulting firm, opening a new branch focused on family mediation and conflict resolution." He smiled. "I need someone to run it, someone who knows how to handle difficult situations with grace." "Uncle Pablo, before you say no, hear me out. You're the best in the business, Destiny. And now that you're free from playing peacekeeper in your own family, imagine what you could do professionally." A knock interrupted us. Mom stood in the doorway, looking exhausted. "I'm sorry to barge in, but Felicia's missing." I sighed. Define missing. "She left a note saying she was going to fix everything." Mom's hands twisted together. "She's not answering her phone, and her car is gone." "Did you check the Grand Hotel?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Why would she?" Mom's eyes widened. "Oh, God, you don't think—" "That's where she met Clay during their affair." I stood up, grabbing my keys. "And knowing my sister, she's either there to confront him again or do something stupid." "I'm coming with you," Uncle Pablo announced. The drive to the hotel was tense. Mom kept trying to call Felicia while Pablo made calls to his contacts at the hotel. I focused on navigating traffic, trying not to think about what my sister might do in her desperate state. We found her car in the hotel parking lot. "Room 412, I told the front desk clerk. "Has anyone checked in there today?" The clerk typed something into her computer. "Yes, about an hour ago. Mr. Shelton is—" I was already heading for the elevators, Pablo and Mom hurrying behind me. The scene we walked into on the fourth floor stopped us cold. Felicia stood in the hallway, screaming at Clay through his hotel room door. "You promised we'd be together," she yelled, pounding on the door. "You said once everything was out in the open. That's enough." I grabbed her arm, spinning her around. "What are you doing?" She jerked away, mascara streaking her face. "He told me he loved me. He said once you found out, we could stop hiding." The door opened and Clay appeared, looking disheveled. "I never— Destiny?" His face paled. "What are you doing here?" "Apparently watching my sister make an even bigger fool of herself." I turned to Felicia. "Is this what you wanted? To destroy everything and everyone around you?" "He loved me," she insisted. "Tell her, Clay. Tell her what you said that night." Clay stepped into the hallway, keeping his distance. "Felicia, I never— I mean, we were both drunk and—" "Liar." She lunged at him, but Uncle Pablo caught her. "You said I was special. You said—" "I said what you wanted to hear." Clay cut her off. "Because you were there, and you were willing, and I was weak. That's all it was." The silence that followed was deafening. Felicia sagged in Pablo's arms, all fight leaving her body. "Oh, honey," Mom stepped forward. "Let's get you home." "I can't." Felicia's voice broke. "I can't face Marco. I can't face anyone." "Actually," I said quietly, "you can, and you will, because that's what adults do when they make mistakes. They face them." Clay moved toward me. "Destiny, please. The divorce papers are being delivered to your office tomorrow." I met his eyes steadily. Sign them, Clay. It's the least you can do. What about us? He asked. 8 years of marriage, just gone? It was gone the moment you decided my sister was more important than our vows. I turned to Pablo. About that job offer? I accept. He smiled, still holding Felicia. Good, because I already had the paperwork drawn up. You're leaving? Mom asked, surprised. The branch is in Seattle. I straightened my shoulders. Fresh start, new city. No more family drama. But what about, Felicia started. What about you? I finished. For once, that's not my problem to solve. You made your choices. Now live with them. As we walked toward the elevator, leaving Clay standing alone in the hallway, I felt lighter than I had in years. No more playing mediator in my own life. No more fixing other people's messes. Uncle Pablo squeezed my shoulder. You know what they say about karma? I smiled. That it comes full circle? No, he grinned. That sometimes it takes you exactly where you need to go. The elevator doors closed on my old life, and for the first time in forever, I was ready for whatever came next. 3 days before my move to Seattle, I found myself at Riverside Cafe, the place where Clay and I had our first date, and ironically, where he'd later meet Felicia for their secret rendezvous. I needed this final confrontation, this closure, before I could truly move forward. Clay arrived exactly on time, looking smaller somehow, less sure of himself. He slid into the booth across from me, his wedding ring conspicuously absent. You look good, he said, attempting a smile. I feel good. I pushed a manila envelope across the table. The signed divorce papers, your copy. He stared at the envelope without touching it. Is this really how we're ending things? You ended things when you started sleeping with my sister. I stirred my coffee. I'm just making it official. It wasn't like that. He leaned forward. Felicia was, she was vulnerable and, stop. I held up my hand. I didn't come here for explanations or excuses. I came here to tell you something important. The waitress approached, but one look at our faces sent her retreating. I've spent 8 years being the perfect wife, I continued, the family mediator, the one who smooths everything over and makes it all okay. But you know what I realized? He shook his head. I realized I'm really good at my job, at solving conflicts and helping people find resolution. But I was so busy fixing everyone else's problems, I forgot to fix my own. Destiny. Let me finish. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a saved photo. Remember this? Our wedding day. You promised to love and cherish me forever. I believed you because I wanted to believe in forever. I did love you, he protested. I still. No. I put the phone away. You loved the idea of me, the calm, collected wife who never made waves, who looked the other way when you started coming home late, who made excuses for you to our friends. He slumped in his seat. What do you want me to say? Nothing. I want you to listen. I leaned forward. I'm moving to Seattle next week, starting fresh, building something new, and I want you to know that I forgive you. His head snapped up. What? Not for your sake, I clarified. For mine, because holding on to this anger and betrayal isn't who I want to be anymore. What about Felicia? He asked quietly. That's between you two, and Marco, and whoever else gets caught in her drama. I stood up, dropping some cash on the table for my untouched coffee. I'm done being the family fixer. He grabbed my wrist as I turned to leave. Wait, there's something you should know. I pulled free. Unless it's about the divorce papers, Felicia's pregnant. The words hit me like a physical blow. I slowly sat back down. Is it mine? I don't know. He ran a hand through his hair. She told me yesterday. Said she hasn't told anyone else yet. I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. Of course she is. One final bomb to drop before I leave. What are you going to do? Me? Nothing. I stood up again. Like I said, not my problem anymore. But you might want to invest in a good lawyer. You're really just gonna walk away? From all of us? I paused, looking around the cafe, where so much of my life had happened. You know what the hardest part of being a conflict resolution specialist is? Learning when to walk away from a conflict that can't be resolved. And that's what we are? Unresolvable? No. I smiled sadly. We're just finished. Good luck, Clay. I mean that. I walked out of the cafe into the bright afternoon sunlight. My phone buzzed. A text from Uncle Pablo. Seattle office is ready. Your new life awaits. Another text came through, this one from Felicia. I need to talk to you. It's important. I deleted it without responding. A third message popped up from Marco. Heard you're leaving town. Can we meet? There's something you should know. I typed back quickly. Some stories need to end for new ones to begin. Take care of yourself. As I drove home past the church where everything had fallen apart, past the hotel where secrets had been kept and revealed, I felt something shift inside me. The weight of being everyone's savior lifted from my shoulders. My phone rang, Mom's number flashing on the screen, probably calling about Felicia's news. I let it go to voicemail. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop trying to fix what's broken and focus on building something new instead. I pulled into my driveway, where moving boxes waited to be loaded. The for sale sign in my front yard caught the afternoon light, transforming it into something that looked less like an ending and more like a beginning. Seattle was waiting. A new office, new clients, new stories to help resolve. But this time on my terms. And for once, I wasn't looking back to see who I was leaving behind. The Seattle rain drummed against my office windows as I reviewed the day's last case file. A knock at the door made me look up to find Uncle Pablo, his hair damp from the weather. Surprise, he grinned. Thought I'd check on my star employee. You flew across the country to check on me? I raised an eyebrow. Actually, he settled into a chair. I came to deliver some news in person and to see how you're handling the latest family drama from afar. I closed the file. You mean Felicia's baby? Babies, he corrected. Twins. The DNA test results came back yesterday. And? Not Clay's. He watched my reaction carefully. Marco's. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Does he know? Found out this morning. Pablo paused, choosing his words. Processing. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Please call your sister. She needs you. I showed Pablo the message. Some things never change. But you have, he noted. The old Destiny would have already been on a plane home. The old Destiny would have tried to fix everything. I turned to the window, watching rain trace patterns on the glass. How's Clay taking the news? Relieved, I imagine. He's leaving town. Took a job in Chicago. A knock interrupted us. My assistant poked her head in. Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here to see you. Says it's important. Marco stepped into my office, looking both exhausted and determined. I'll give you two some privacy, Pablo said, standing. He squeezed my shoulder as he passed. Remember what I said about karma? After he left, Marco and I stared at each other in silence. You look good, he finally said. Seattle agrees with you. Marco, I'm not here to complicate things, he interrupted. I needed to tell you something face to face. I gestured to the chair Pablo had vacated. About the babies? He sat heavily. You knew? Pablo just told me. I studied his face. What are you gonna do? That's why I'm here. He leaned forward. I'm keeping them, the babies. I'm gonna raise them myself. What about Felicia? He sighed. She's not well. After you left, she spiraled. She's checking into a treatment center tomorrow. Postpartum depression. anxiety, other issues that probably should have been addressed years ago. I absorbed this information, feeling an old, familiar pull to fix things. And you came here because you're the only person who ever told me the truth, even when it hurt. He met my eyes. I need your advice, not as a mediator or a sister in law, but as someone who knows what it's like to choose yourself over family obligations. You're afraid, I realized. Afraid you'll mess this up like everything else. He nodded. Two babies' destiny. Two little lives depending on me to get it right. I stood up and walked to my credenza, pulling out two coffee mugs and a hidden bottle of whiskey. Want to know what I've learned since moving here? He accepted the offered drink. Tell me that sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us exactly where we need to be. I sat on the edge of my desk. That karma isn't about punishment, it's about balance. And what's the balance here? I get two babies I never planned for, and Felicia gets, what? Institutionalized? She gets help, I corrected. Finally, and you get a chance to be the father you always wanted to be. He took a long sip. Will you help? Not fix everything, just be there? As an aunt? On one condition. I held up a finger. No more drama, no more secrets, just honest communication and boundaries. Deal. He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him since the wedding. You know, you're really good at this whole advice thing. I should be. It's what I do for a living. I raised my glass. To new beginnings? To karma, he countered, and to the sister who was strong enough to walk away and smart enough to show us all how to stand on our own. After Marco left, I stood at my window watching the rain. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Felicia. I'm getting help. Finally. I'm sorry for everything. For the first time in months, I typed back. Good. Take care of yourself. The babies will need their mother healthy. The response came quickly. Will you ever forgive me? I thought about karma, about balance, about the way life has of sorting itself out if we just get out of its way. Already have, I replied. Now focus on forgiving yourself. The Seattle skyline glittered through the rain, and I smiled, thinking about how sometimes you have to leave everything behind to find exactly where you belong, not running away, but running towards something better, not fixing others, but fixing yourself, not ending a story, but starting a new chapter. And this time, I was writing it on my own terms.